I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, January 20th, 2015. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Palumski.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item 3, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody, please raise your hand, is there anybody in the audience who has any written communications they wish to submit? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, public forum. Agenda item 4. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council on any item they so wish. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for the work that we have to do here this evening and potentially out of the respect for the folks who want to talk as well. If you, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. I will be keeping time, and if you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap it up. Clerk Spencer, do we have anybody signed up this evening for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll start with Gilbert R. Fisher, 586 North Van Auken.
Mr. Fisher, please approach the microphone. State your name. Address is optional.
Good evening. Gilbert Fisher, 586 North Van Auken, Elmhurst, Illinois. Good evening. I received my electric bill. Taxes and fees. Environmental Cost Recovery Act, tax 21 cents. Energy efficiency programs, $1.57. Franchise cost, $1.11. The state tax, $2.29. Whoops, hold it a second. Municipal tax for the city of Elmhurst, $3.89. I don't know what's going on here, but this tax that you passed a law, my government, that I have to pay on my electricity is ridiculous. I just read off what the taxes are. City of Elmhurst has the highest tax from everything. What do you need all this money for? You are my government. You're supposed to give me streets, sewers, water, police department, fire department. Why are you buying lots? Why are you building buildings? Why are you bribing companies to come into Elmhurst by giving them millions of dollars to keep the city going? I'm retired 17 years. I make $38,000 a year, for sitting on my ass. Doing nothing. I get $38,000 a year, and I gotta live on it. And you charge me this much tax for the city of Elmhurst on my electricity, and you tax me on my telephone, you tax me on my gas, and heaven forbid what you tax me on my house. Please, I'm asking you to change the direction of what you've been doing for 20 years. It's not working. My taxes keep going up. My salary keeps going down because I work for the government and they keep taking out more from the post office. It's ridiculous. When I retired, I could go to Burger King and get a Burger King combo, the Big Mac combo, for $1.99. Now it's $5.89. And you put taxes like this on me? You're my government. Please cut the taxes. Thank you.
Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. I see on the agenda tonight the city council is going to vote on maybe destroying some records. Not all records, but some records. There was a gentleman named Madison who try to recall what was said at the Constitutional Convention. The only true record we have of what was discussed at that meeting. Those records became available after he died. It's an interesting series of records of recall of what actually took place because there were no records kept. Why this council wants to destroy recorded documents of meetings held is beyond me. They were recorded on public equipment, are kept on public disc, and a gentleman that was president tried to destroy what he taped. We find today that there's a lot of reasons why certain things took place at that period of time. I asked this council not to destroy those records, because if you do that, we lose part of history, part of a reasoning of why things were done in this town. We'll all disappear one day. Maybe those that come along will be interested in why decisions were made that had an effect and developed the city. And if you're willing to destroy these records, and you may very well have the ability to do it, that's not the point. Because if Madison hadn't written his record, we'd have really no idea why we have the Constitution the way it is in this country today. Now, what you're doing does not reach that level of importance, but it is important. And what is said on tapes is often regretted. But what is done because it's said has an effect on this community. And maybe just one day after we're all gone, there may be those few people that'll be really interested in what comments were made to bring this town to the state it is at that point in time.
Ms. Pragash, I'd ask you to wrap it up.
So please, don't destroy the records.
Tamara Brenner.
Tamara Brenner. So tucked into the consent agenda tonight is the request for proposals for 138 and 142 North Addison Avenue, which is a parking lot, city-owned parking lot on the west side of Addison, across the street from the $20 million parking garage that's starting to get underway. I find it curious that this item is on the consent agenda, which means that it's expected to pass without discussion. Obviously, somebody will pull it, but why was it put on the consent agenda rather than under a place where it could be discussed? Because here's another pretty sizable development project that's going to get underway in the city that nobody really has any clue is going to be happening. And once this thing is approved, that's going to be off and running. So right now, we already don't know what the downtown's going to look like after all these big buildings get put in place. And now we're requesting proposals for yet another development. This thing should be discussed, this pretty complicated RFP, actually. There's a lot of things in there that merit discussion, not just a simple vote along with 13 or 12 other items. For instance, we're talking about proposals that maximize density and building height again. It says in there we don't want to go over 45 feet this time. Maximum building height, what's that? And density, maximizing density, here we go again. I still haven't had council discuss what maximum density is envisioned for the downtown. What do we mean by proposals that maximize density? These discussions should happen openly, and if everybody on council, minus one or two people, is willing to just pass this without further discussion, then I don't think we're being well represented as citizens of the town. This thing is rushing through, it seems like, as part of a plan that's been put in place for a while. This is part of what was discussed in the closed-door sessions from September 2012, where we wanted buildings up 6 stories on both sides of Addison. And it seems like once the ball has gotten rolling with the parking garage, it is accelerating. I'm not real happy with how this is happening, and I think this should be slowed down. I'd like to hear some discussion on this tonight.
That's all that signed it.
Okay, that's it for everyone who has signed in. Is there anyone this evening who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our signage sheet to speak at public forum, but wishes to do so now? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda item 5, announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, we'll move on. Consent agenda, and agenda item 6. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to pull, to vote no, or have further discussion? Alderman Budenkoff.
Item 611.
Item 611, okay. Any others? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.11. Motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Healy. Clerk Spencer.
Wagner.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mullenor.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Paludo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, consent agenda passes minus item 6.11. On to agenda item 6.11, it is a report out of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the proposed request for proposals for 138 and 142 North Addison in substantially the form and substance shown on the attached drafts, signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Polumsky, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mullenor, Alderman, 7th Ward.
Okay, to put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the recommendation, the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Polumsky. Alderman Levin, this is a report out of your committee.
Thank you. I'm not sure how it got on the consent agenda, to tell you the truth. I think it was an assumption by staff, but we understand this is something that needs to be discussed, and this is probably the first presentation for some of the aldermen. Basically, these two lots are across the street from the new Addison parking garage. They're surface parking lots. The committee started talking about it because when the new lot goes up, the need for that surface parking will go away. The city owns both lots. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about it. And the committee's discussion ranged from, shall we just hire a broker and let the market bring to bear whoever wants to pay the greatest price? Do we want to do an RFP and have some sort of city participation in what happens there in a project? And the consensus of the committee after probably 3 or 4 meetings was what we thought was somewhat of a creative hybrid. We don't want to just go out and let someone come in and build what they want on that lot. Because it is our downtown, we'd like to have some say to make sure that it's the best, or one of the best uses of the property. We don't know what it would be. On the other hand, we didn't want to encourage additional development on the city's dime, that we necessarily are going to be partners on anything, such as the situation perhaps with the Addison parking garage or Hahn Street. So after a couple of meetings, we've came up with this request for development proposal, which basically it's a very simplified RFP. We want to put it out and have people come forward and say, and I think the most important feature, or one of them, is what will you pay the city for the property? And secondly, what would you propose to do on the property? And then look at it at that point. If you compare it to the RFP, for instance, on Hahn Street, you'll see that it leaves out a whole lot of the information, so we don't want to make it so expensive that people feel like they might want to buy the property or submit a proposal of what they would do if they bought it because of the cost of putting together a response to this. So it's intended to go out and invite people to tell us if they're interested in buying it, what they would want to do with it, and see where it goes from there. The reference to the 45 feet is actually, I think there's a feeling that we hear that everything the council wants to do is 65 feet, and I think there's been when we look at where this location is, if someone wants to propose 65 feet, I guess they'd be free to do that, but this is a piece of property that would back up against residential, so we've encouraged, we're essentially stating that we would like to stay within that 45-foot framework in the proposals. They can propose whatever they want. That's the essence of it. The proposal would then be, and not to circumvent the full council, but to get things reviewed, is to see what's there, let the DPZ review it, and then it depends what we get. We might say, here they all are, let's bring it back to the council as a whole. We might say, you know, we had 5 proposals, there's 3 we should bring back. We might make a recommendation, we might present the top choices. But it's a way to get responses, not to tie the city into any development, and to have a little bit of control of what goes there.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with what Alderman Levin said, especially as we're on the report. We all agreed from the start that we will not have a need for this surface lot, and we did thoroughly examine ways in which we should sell this property. And when we talked about an outright sale, you know, we kind of joked, well, if we do that, will we get another yogurt shop and hair salon and burger joint? But if we are to be involved in, at some level, we can have some decision-making ability for what goes in there. We discussed how this process might be similar to Han Street and the proposal that was decided upon with that process. And we would say that drawbacks to an elaborate RFP process for the site are significant. This site is only 150 feet wide, 150 feet frontage. One is, Alderman Levin mentioned, the time that an applicant would have to spend putting together a proposal, but also staff time and the length of time to complete the project. As we know, the city is involved with development of Han Street and Addison Street. Han Street was, the proposal was put together in November of 2006, and we're still working on the RDA now. And I think it might be similar. We know where Addison, it was going to be a parking garage, but still that's been in the works since 2009. There are many potential developments out there, and possibly there's a possibility for all the businesses and restaurants and offices that Elmhurst residents want to have in town. But if we require the intricate details that rise to the level of Han Street, we would exclude some developers capable of delivering on these projects. They may not want to spend the money and time required. I think that there's a similarity to an employer looking to fill a vacancy. If a business is seeking to hire new staff and requires first-round applicants to complete an essay and answer a lengthy list of questions, some potential applicants may decide without any assurance that they're viable candidates or guaranteed interviews not to apply. The employer would end up generating a pool of candidates willing and available to spend extensive time and effort applying for a job. By requesting a resume and cover letter alone, the employer could create a larger pool of potentially more qualified candidates. An overly burdensome proposal requirement can negate the draw of the Addison deck across the street. It may be pointed out that with this RFP, we do have the ability to set some important standards up front, and some we cannot. But some of these standards can take care of themselves. For example, Han Street, we mentioned bike-friendly, but that doesn't really apply as right across the street there's bike parking. There will be, and some that we did mention, for example, this is going to be along residential, and that 45 feet as a limit would be most appropriate. But other attributes we think could be, that are priorities of our community, could be negotiated as we move forward. And I want to touch on the process a little bit. We did discuss how this should move through the council, and we intentionally did not indicate a number of proposals that we would select at the DPZ level. It's possible that these will come before us and we'll decide that they all look like viable projects, and that we can't separate them, and we'll send them all to the full council, or a few may rise to the top. We're not sure, but we intentionally did not say that we're going to take 4 or 5 finalists. So we discussed this at length, and we think that this is the right type of RFP for this site.
Very good. Any other comments? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, thank you. Since I pulled this, I do have a few comments. Since I am a little dismayed, because it has been the council's process to meet as the committee of the whole whenever we discuss projects of this nature. We've done this a lot in the 7 years, almost 8 years that I've been on the city council. So I was a little dismayed that at no point during the discussion of the RFP development did this come before the council's committee of the whole, and that it appears to me that although the full version document stamped draft, it is intended to be the final version of the RFP. So I'm hoping that tonight we can at least address some of the concerns that I have about the document, and particularly about its adjacency to the residential neighborhood on the other side of the alley. And one of those concerns for the residents that live in this area, I think, is the building height. And I noticed that 45 feet is listed in this document several times, but at no point does the document ever specifically indicate that a building higher than 45 feet is unacceptable. For example, on page 10, section 4, paragraph 2, the final sentence reads, exceeding the 45-foot height limit on the west side of Addison Street is not encouraged. I propose that we strike is not encouraged and replace it with is not allowed, or language of that nature. This property backs up to single-family homes. It doesn't back up to a condo building. It doesn't back up to other commercial buildings. We're talking about the zone of downtown that backs up to single-family homes. And a 45-foot building on the other side of the alley from homes for whom this city has had conversations in the past about what that buffer zone is going to look like. I really think that we need to take extra care to make sure that we're not overshadowing those houses. A 45-foot high building is plenty big enough and going to overshadow those houses. So I think everywhere we talk about 45 feet in height in this document, we need to be a lot stronger about what we mean. The alley access is of particular concern because every single residence that backs up on this alley accesses its garage. The condo building accesses its parking garage, and all the residents access their garages off this alley. I don't think we've done enough in here to indicate how important that access is. I also think that we need to have a conversation about appropriate types of businesses that we would want to consider for this property. We have not done that as a council. I think we do the residents a disservice to ignore the fact that although we may desire, for example, to have restaurants in this building, certainly Elmhurst is being known as a destination for folks who like to eat out. This is making it a very strong... Mr. Mayor, am I interrupting your conversation?
No, Alderman Gutenkopf, I'm consulting with the city attorney about what might be pending, so, but go ahead.
Pending about this document?
Absolutely.
Shall I wait until you're finished?
No, continue.
So I think that although restaurants are highly desirable types of businesses, and Elmhurst is becoming well-known as a place to eat out, controlling that garbage and ensuring that we don't have vermin problems or trash problems behind this building is going to be really important. I think that I fully understand the DPZ committee's desire not to overly complicate this document, but there are certain steps that we can take to strengthen the document that won't overly complicate it, and will give a clear message to potential developers that we have really considered what can go on here. I don't think this thing is ready to release, and I do think that we need to have a lot more conversation about it. So I'm going to start first by recommending, I'm making a motion to amend everywhere that the document mentions a 45-foot height limit. We include language that indicates that this is an absolute.
Okay. Do you happen to know how many locations that is?
I do not.
So go ahead and
So
phrase your,
this is a-
go ahead and phrase your motion, and so that the council will understand it.
I move that every mention of a 45-foot height limit indicate that this is in fact the highest we will allow a building to be built.
1 second. Don.
I believe there's two.
Okay, where's the first one? I have the second one on page 10. There's another one.
On section 4?
Yeah, page 10. I got one. Where's the other one?
I remember it.
Oh, I got one on page 8 and two on page 8.
Page 8 I don't think would be applicable.
You're right.
Because
Yeah,
it's a zoning
requirements,
statements.
yeah. Rear yard.
Why limit it?
We just enjoy our property, we accept it. You know what I mean?
I only have page 10.
Okay. We can do what we want.
And since this is a draft document, I'm assuming that we'll see a final version.
Well, yeah, I'm certain there's one that will probably be voted on, but it says, the recommendation is substantially the form and substance shown in the attached drafts. I agree with your intent. I would say that making 45 feet the maximum, which is what I understand your motion to be, is a change in the form, so it currently would not be substantially form and substance as shown on the attached draft. I was checking with City Manager Storino if,
City attorney.
let's see, City Manager, not yet, City Attorney Storino, as to whether or not, how this conflicts with our current zoning ordinance and the conditional use that's accorded there. But it's our property, so we can put this caveat on it if we want. So we have a motion from Alderman Gutenkopf to state that per the RFP, the maximum proposal entertained will be 45 feet. Clear enough, Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second by Alderman Deuter. So we have a motion to amend the report and the RFPs there attached. And the motion is to amend anywhere it says 45 feet to state that as a maximum, as a requirement in this RFP.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I guess it's more a point of clarification. Does that mean that by adding that statement, that our current zoning, which would allow above 45 by conditional use only, would that be negated? And will only be accepting 45?
This is what I was getting clarification on. This is our property. We own it. So we can make that a stipulation independent of the zoning law. We can choose not to sell it to anybody moving forward. I would assume, if this motion passes, we would enter into an agreement with the developer that says, you're only going to build at 45 feet or less. So the conditional use doesn't go into it because they're agreeing to it before it even gets to that.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, we can't change the zoning law right now, but we can change the condition of the sale, and that's what we're doing. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional comment? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think the committee did a very good job providing for flexibility when it was appropriate, and I respect and agree with the position to try and allow that flexibility. I think when it comes to height, the properties that are immediately behind it, which Alderman Gutenkopf described, I think it is appropriate to remove the flexibility on the height to really stick with our intent. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the way the downtown plan is written, it's absolutely intended to step down the height as we approach the outer core. I think in the case of the Morningside, the Han Street development, you know, they, while the development in some places goes up to 65 feet, they are stepping it down to be aligned with what exists on Addison with respect to that residential district. So I think it's appropriate to require a developer who responds to this RFP to have the same approach.
Alderman Levin.
Well, this is somewhat of the debate we might have touched upon in committee, not exactly, but, and I'll explain why, is that if you just sell it, you sell it. And there was an idea, you try to please everyone. People say, well, why is the city getting involved? Why don't we just sell the property? And then we start talking about control. Now I think we're swinging back the other way and saying, well, okay, yes, we want to sell it, but before you put your proposals in, we've got to put these concerns about height and the access in the alley and the type of business, is it going to have garbage? The whole point is to say, let's see what you have to tell us in your application. Then we have plenty of time to look at it. And if the will of the council is not to go above 45 feet, we won't go above 45 feet. The committee was very sensitive to that. We're the ones that put it in. And I think you'd have to be pretty naive if you're a developer and you see it's not encouraged, it's disencouraged, whatever, and say, yeah, we'll come in with a 65-foot project. But let's say, for instance, someone comes up with some particular use that has to go to 50 feet. Maybe it's a health club or whatever. And we're saying, well, can't do it. Don't even bother to apply because we're telling you we won't even look at it. So by opening it up to debate about exactly what should go there flies in the face of what we're trying to do, which is to say, tell us what you would like to do. But by the way, we don't want you to go above 45 feet. But if there's some reason why you have to, then tell us. And that doesn't mean that there's no one on the committee that wants to go to 65 feet or to go above 45 feet. But instead of dictating each and every detail of what we want for this property and slowing down the process, and it's like, this is what happened on Hahn Street. Let's put it out there in a way that's not just selling it, see what comes back, and then have that discussion. So I'm not against it, but I can't support it because I think it just leads down the road to more and more constraints in terms of what we can get as a response that we can look at and decide what we want to do.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that it was the intent of the committee to say that we're not interested in seeing proposals go above 45 feet. I do see this a little bit differently, though, because what our intention is to seek or to put together an RFP that doesn't require a developer to work on something that really is not going to be worth their time or our time. And if we are saying it's 45 feet, I would agree with putting it in as an absolute. That was our intention. It doesn't bother me either way to leave it that way or to make it more clear. That's what we were going for. But if it means somebody is not putting together a proposal that goes above that, then I think that they might have saved some time. So I don't see a problem in this change. Thanks.
Alderman Braham.
Thank you. I think the point of an RFP is to provide direction, and leveraging an RFP, leveraging this case, is to give clear direction to any potential developers on what the city council and therefore the Elmhurst residents would like to see in that location. Alderman Gutenkopf mentioned and made the motion about the 45 feet. When I read not encouraged, I was wondering why it was in there, due to the fact that our zoning law says it's pretty much prohibited other than conditional use. So to me, my thought process was leave it out and just defer to the actual zoning code. If everybody's in agreement, I personally don't want to see anything higher than a 45 feet structure in this location. I don't have an issue of actually clearly stating that we as a council, we as a city do not want anything over 45 feet. That doesn't limit any developer to come in at 50 feet, 47 feet, 52 feet, and ignore that one line in our RFP and still make their proposal. If it's eye-catching enough and if it's the best project overall anyway, beside that one criteria, that developer might win it. I don't think by putting some restrictions or clarifications or direction is probably the best word in the RFP slows down the process. Hahn Street in the city of Elmhurst is an anomaly compared to all the other projects we've done here. Let's not hang our hat on Hahn Street that we had such a complicated RFP that every project going forward is gonna be multiple years before it gets developed. I don't see the 45 feet limitation being an issue, and I support entirely putting a definitive statement in the RFP.
Any other comments as it relates to this motion? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one, if it is the intent of the committee that the limit is 45 feet, I am concerned that with the language that's in there now, which does, it's not absolute language. It does kind of allow the doors open to something taller. I am concerned that for a developer who's trying to sort that out, and they're trying to understand what it really means, that if we take this vote tonight and the vote fails to limit specifically in this document to 45 feet, that the developer gets the message. It will be on the record that says, you know what, it says they'd rather not have it exceed 45 feet, but the motion to make that absolute failed by the majority of the council. So I am concerned that if it's our intent that we should, at least on this point, be as clear about that as possible, and that it's actually in the interest and for the benefit of the developer, so that they are bringing forth a project that actually will receive the support of the committee and then ultimately the full council.
Alderman Mulliner.
I have to support Alderman Levin on this. Our intent was to basically say that we're not interested in the 45 feet, but at the same time, or going over the 45 feet, but at the same time, our goal was to try to get out there and let people have some flexibility and be a little bit creative. If we restrict ourselves and say, we absolutely do not want you to go over 45 feet. Now we're going to make it so that if somebody wanted to come in and let's say that they wanted to put on the corner of one of the buildings a clock tower that went 48 feet. Now we're going, and we know we're going to have to do some stuff with zoning no matter what way we go, but I feel that we're creating some restrictions by doing this. And the goal of this RFP was not to trip us up on those restrictions. The goal was to see what interest is out there as far as developing the downtown area. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to look at what options are out there because it's right across from our brand-new parking deck. So I would support Alderman Levin on not changing the wording that exists right now. It is very clear that it says we're not interested in exceeding it, but if you come in with a proposal that's better, that's fine.
Any other comments? Alderman Gutenkopf.
It's been a really, really long time since my college logic class. I know that there is a phrase, a term for the fallacy that I'm hearing tonight. I just can't drag it out of the back of my mind because I haven't taken logic in a long time, but I at least remember the principles of logic. It is our job to create parameters. You could use the word restrictions if you like, but it is our job as a city council to create the parameters under which we encourage development in our community. I'm proposing we create definitive parameters because, as has been said by other aldermen here tonight, it would behoove us to give developers a very clear sense of what it is we're looking for, and not a wishy-washy sense of maybe this and maybe that, and if it goes 2 feet above it, well, oh my God, the world will end because the developer can't go 2 feet above it. I don't see why we can't be clear, because ultimately, remember what we're doing here. We're building a building in the periphery of downtown that is in a zone, a buffer zone, against the residential neighborhood that will be impacted by the height and the width and the breadth of this building. I don't know of any developer worth his salt that can't operate within these clear parameters. And if they want to park a decorative element that goes a couple of feet, this council has certainly shown its willingness to accept that. And I'm sure any developer who wants to work in Elmhurst is fully well aware of the fact that this council is willing to park a decorative element on a building that goes a little bit higher than what we allow. And I don't see how creating some clear language in this RFP is going to change that. What it will do is cut out oversized projects that don't fit the lot and that are just too massive. We want to keep a buffer zone. The comprehensive plan, the downtown plan, the zoning code are all clear on this. I'm just asking you to make a definitive statement in this RFP that says, we know how tall we want this building to be. We don't want to see requests for conditional use or variances that bring it up to 6 stories. That's all. Just put a period at the end of the sentence. We don't want buildings over 45 feet. Thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'm going to start by thanking the DPZ committee and appreciating the work that you put in. I know you guys wrestled with this over many meetings, over a few months. I had a nice conversation with Alderman Polumsky about what I thought about, when Alderman Polumsky and I had a chance, what I'd like to see. I had a couple conversations with Alderman Levin about what I thought. At any point, if this issue was that important, any alderman could have requested it to come before a committee of the whole. In fact, I think it's Alderman Mulliner that usually mentions something that is important to him, that says we should discuss as a committee of the whole when it happens. So we could have done that ahead of time, but we didn't, and
Yes,
it
we
went
did.
through the committee like a I'm sorry, should I wait?
Sure,
Alderman Gutenkopf, Alderman Healy has the floor.
sure.
Thank you, Mayor. So now to the issue at hand. I agree with Alderman Levin and Alderman Mulliner. Certainly, building height is a contentious issue right now in town for good reason, and I understand the pros and cons on both sides. The issue is important to me for this particular property, but I thought the wording in the RFP is fine. Some might call it wishy-washy, I don't. I think it's very clear what our intention is, knowing that the zoning code and the zoning process is behind it anyway. An issue that's more important to me is the percentage of sales tax producing entities that go in that building. So if some aldermen feel that building height is very important, and I understand why it would be, I would like to see us put a percentage of sales tax producing entities that go into that building. Should we say 70%, 80%? Now, that's me. Another alderman might say, well, color of the building is important to me. We can go down that road, and next thing we know, we've got another hardcore RFP process, and 4 years from now, the future councils will be wrestling what we do with that building. I think the position that the DPZ committee took is the appropriate one, that tries to balance the let's just sell it to let's control what goes on there. There's some parts in there that aren't going to be comfortable for those on either side. I think the wording of the RFP is good. It doesn't commit us to anything. It gives us a framework to choose a developer from to which to sell the land, to have some level of control, and at that point, if there's something over the height of 45, we, as a council, we can make the decision whether to move forward. At that point, if somebody's proposing to put a building in that's 100% non-sales tax producing, we as a council can decide whether we want to do that or not. Stormwater, and that's Alderman Polumsky and I had a long part of our long conversation was on stormwater. We don't mention stormwater in here other than, we got to be aware of it. I mean, certainly there's a lot of us that feel strongly that we should put a 100-year storm event on. I mean, you see where I'm going here. There's a lot of things that are important to a lot of people. And at some point, we've got to trust the work that the committee did, whether we completely agree with it or not, move forward knowing that we have got at least another 2 bites at the apple before we pick a developer to sell the land to and agree to what they're doing. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I'll just make 2 points on this motion. One, I believe direction or clarification in RFP for height especially is appropriate in this case. The other point is, I myself, once if not twice publicly, have made the request for this to be discussed as committee of the whole. So I think that seeing something like this in the first time as a report brings about some contention and discussion because of the fact of this is the first time that everybody on the council has a chance to bite the apple, if you would. But again, I'll just say I support the motion of definitively making the clarification for the benefit of the developers who are planning to submit something for this parcel. Because what if we don't make that clarification, we get submissions that nobody can agree on because we weren't clear? You have to balance between general and having some specifics to get a good product, I believe. And I've seen that in my tenure of many projects, with the exception of Pond Street.
Okay, any other comments or questions as it relates to this motion? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll. Before she does, I will restate the motion to the best of my ability, which is where it says 45 feet, the intent of the motion is to make that the absolute limit versus discouraged. Clear on that? Everyone clear? Clerk Spencer, please call the roll on the motion to amend the report.
Gutenkopf.
Yes.
Deuter.
Aye.
Leader.
Nay.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Nay.
York.
No.
Levin.
No.
Healy.
No.
Conquest.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
Nope.
Dunn.
Aye.
Okay, I think that's it, right? 9 and 5. Okay, 5 ayes and 9 nays.
5 ayes, 9 nays, motion, 5 ayes, 9 nays, motion to amend fails. Back to the underlying main motion. Any additional comments or questions? Alderman Braham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You even did that without even looking this way. I do have a few questions in regards to the overall report, one of which Alderman Gutenkopf already covered. On page, what it says, states 5 under the executive summary, and the fourth paragraph, which is indented, it makes statements, and I believe one of the residents spoke to that, proposals that maximize density and building height with an aggressive construction timeline are preferred. And this in bold, applicants are encouraged to pursue opportunities for partnerships with adjoining property owners if partnering results in a feasible project. I understand this is just an executive summary. I'm not sure why the city council would be concerned with quote-unquote an aggressive construction timeline, and why is that a preference? I don't see that being beneficial at all in this instance, or really almost any development. I want the best and most appropriate timeline for the type of project that goes in, because it's going to be there for many a decades, up to 100+ years. So I would like to ask, if I could, Mr. Mayor, the committee to speak to why that is believed to be needed, an aggressive construction timeline, and then the subsequent sentence for that of applicants are encouraged to pursue opportunities for partnerships with adjoining property owners. We've heard rumblings and hearsay about some of the neighboring properties up for sale today. Why in
Alderman Braham, what, if I may, you said you were on page 5 of the executive summary?
Yes, sir.
Where's-
Fourth paragraph, the one that's indented, at least on my copy.
Page 2.
Oh,
Page 2, maybe?
sorry, in the full version.
In the full version, okay. Page 2?
Page 5.
It says page 5 for me.
Ah, yes, okay, got it. Full version, page 5, indented paragraph, go ahead.
Sorry. The title is executive summary, not the executive summary document.
Got
That's the misclarification there. So that's the other question I would pose to the committee on why are we encouraging in an RFP to do business with any other adjoining property owners? I would think that would just be basic business practice. Why do we need to stipulate the aggressive construction timeline and pursuing neighboring properties?
So your question is why the RFP encourages an aggressive timeline and to encourage them to talk to someone on either side of them, let's say.
Correct.
Okay? Alderman Mulliner?
The aggressive timeline is put in there specifically for the purpose of the fact that we're concerned if somebody comes in and purchases the property and decides, well, maybe I'll sit on it now for 3 or 4 years. Even though we've done an RFP, once they own it, they don't have to have an aggressive timeline. So we want to make sure that they don't just take the property and sit on it for 3 or 4 years because they're having difficulty with funding or whatever. We want to make sure that they put the project in the ground and start building the project as soon as possible. We don't want any delays in the process. When it comes to encouraging the opportunities of partnerships with the buildings along with it, I would hope that every member of the city council would be encouraging businesses in the community where there's an opportunity for development to be talking with their neighbors to find out if there's any possibilities. So we should, as a council, be encouraging that so we can get the best possible development in an area. So that's the reason why that's in there as well.
Any other comments? Alderman Levin?
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, it's, again, what Alderman Mulliner touched upon, which was if we just sold the property, someone could just hold it for investment. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But we're also saying that we aren't getting involved in assembling the property like Han Street for this RFP, but we're encouraging them, the applicants, to think about looking for a larger project. So I do think that's something the council should say. But again, if they come up with something that doesn't do that, it doesn't mean we wouldn't look at it.
Okay. Alderman Bram?
Thank you. And I agree with both comments from the committee. I just don't know why we would need to not only say it, but highlight that as one of the main points in the document overall. The aggressive timeline, I think that is part of the evaluation of the finalists, right? We get proposals, timeline's part of that proposal. The word aggressive to me, kind of makes me wonder on why we want to get something built here or what's being planned to build here in such a short period of time. I think it's part of the evaluation process when we walk through the proceedings here and get hopefully a lot of interest in this property. I believe the other point being Alderman Gutenkopf as well as Alderman Healy made a statement of having this piece of property being sales tax generating. To what degree, I don't know. I'd like to hear from the committee, was that discussed and why that specification is not currently in the draft RFP, because I think that is very valuable. I think that's very important. It's a city-owned piece of property. If we're removing it off of the tax rolls, then I think that we should be ensuring that we're getting something that will generate sales tax. I believe it was Alderman Polumsky made the statement, if we sell the property, we won't have any control if it's a yogurt shop or a bank. Yogurt shop generates sales tax, but banks obviously do not. In this case, by having an RFP, we have that right, we have that control to specify that it has to be sales tax generating property. I'm not saying 100%, but I'd like to hear on why that is not a mandate in the RFP, because I think, as Alderman Mulliner said about height, about timeline, I think everybody on the dais would like to see, and I'm making an assumption here, but would like to see a sales tax generating property at least to some level.
Alderman Levin?
Well, I think everything you ask goes to the whole foundation of how we're doing this. I remember Alderman Polumsky said, well, shouldn't we have some requirements for have green certification or something? And that's good too. There's a lot of good things we could put in here. But then we start pulling away because there was a discussion, sell it, RFP, and here was a way to say, and you hear people come before the council, some of the aldermen say, let's not get involved in everything, let's just see if we can get it out there. I've made some proposals myself to acquire some property, and people said, we're not in the development business. So that's, as Alderman Healy mentioned, that's just one of a number of things we could add. I don't know that we can say what use it is, but for instance, if a developer comes and says, I don't want to commit to that because I'm willing to build 45 feet, have some office upstairs, but I don't want to be tied into sales tax production on the first floor, then we'd look at it. So this is wide open. And if we liked what someone did and that was a component we wanted to do, then when we start talking about whoever we're talking to, that's something we might do. They might propose on their own that it's sales tax producing. But this is, I could probably go through a dozen different features we could throw in here, but it goes away from the philosophy of why we're doing it this way. No one disagrees with what you're saying, that we wouldn't want sales tax production as opposed to something that doesn't. No one, and I think, would we want, someone could come and say with a one-story building, would we rather have a little bit of height downtown? Yes, but, let's see what they come in with.
Alderman Plumsky.
It became clear when we were looking at the permitted uses in the downtown, as we had a different discussion, that one of us would throw out an idea and say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. This allows us to look to the developers to bring us the ideas, and instead of every single one of us coming up with what we hope to see, and then later say, oh, but I didn't ask for that too. Let's see what the developers bring to us. We realize that there are options and possibilities that we might not think of, or still might not be included, no matter how thick we make this RFP. Let's see what the market brings.
Okay, Alderman Gutenkopf.
So, as I understand it, the committee is trying to keep this request for proposals as flexible as possible. There's clearly a reluctance to put any particular criteria on whatever the developers come back to us with. I'm curious. I'd like to know how we propose to evaluate competing developer proposals without a clear set of ideas as to what we would like to see in this spot. If we're not going to establish that we want this project to generate particular kinds of income, if we're not going to establish that we want this project to be of a certain size, if we use undefined terms such as aggressive for the development timeline, does the committee have some other document they haven't shared with the council that says that this is really what we're looking for, and we will measure all of the proposals against these things that we know in the back of our minds? Or are we going to take however many proposals we get, throw them out into a big pile, and say, gosh, now I don't know what to do with them because we don't really know what we're looking for?
Alderman Levin.
Well, you have to think outside the box a little bit on this, and logically, I mean. And so when you do an RFP, a full-blown RFP, that is one of the things you do, is you list all the criteria, just as we did with Han Street. I remember we spent many hours going around the dais. What's important? Architectural quality, green space, economics, retail component. And we list it all out and we assign points. And we could go through all that. But the philosophy, whether the council wants to do it or not, the philosophy proposed by the committee is, let's not go through all that. I think that there's some pretty sophisticated people in the council, including yourself, that'll know that if we get 8 proposals, some of them might be attractive, and we'll be able to look at it and say, what looks like it's worth pursuing? And the committee will do that and make a recommendation. It's not a point-by-point evaluation like a traditional RFP. When we did Han Street, we had, what was it, $9 million worth of property. The city had a huge investment. This is not, I doubt it's, maybe if you sold the property in the market, maybe you put I don't even want to say what the price is, but it's far, far less. So it doesn't require all of that. And there was initial, as I say, there was initial support for just, let's just sell it and get out of the business. So we're trying to keep a little control, trying to look at it, and seeing what comes in. I think if need be, if we get the proposals and there's not a clear way to do it, then maybe we could look at assigning some criteria. But I just don't think it's going to be that difficult for us to look at what comes in and what people are proposing doing, because really, I have a feeling that price, because we own the property, and our committee was looking at it as, if we just sell it, shouldn't we maximize price? Yes, with some controls. So we'll see what comes in. We don't have to take any of the proposals, but it's a way to get the property onto the tax rolls faster in anticipation of the fact that the garage will be up in a year.
If I may, for the council's sake, I think it's pretty clear what the intent of the committee was. It was to create somewhat of a flexible RFP so that the city would still have a hand and a say in the development, but not go through a 2-year process or so that we've done with Han Street. And I think that's what we have before here, is a flexible way to put an RFP out, but the city still review it and maintain some control. I've heard conversations from both sides. There should be more in this, there should be less in this. We could ask the committee all day long what they thought about this, what they thought about that. And I think, and I was in part of the committee meetings, I think the committee's point was, we entertained a whole bunch of stuff. And in the end, we wanted to give the flexibility to the marketplace, but retain control, and that's what this does. So I would ask, I'm just trying to focus the conversation here, if there are specific things, and we've done it already in this RFP, if there's specific things you want to see change, I think that's fine. Let's discuss it, make a motion up or down. But the what if kind of goes to, as the committee has stated now on more than one occasion, about the philosophy of what they were trying to communicate here. I think you've got as many details as you're going to get out of the committee in terms of what their proposal is on this RFP. So I just wanted to get that out there and try to focus conversation. Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the concern I have is the balancing act between too general and getting submissions by developers that 14 of us then cannot agree on when it comes to the valuation. For example, I'll just throw a hypothetical out there. Maybe most would like to see sales tax generating property to some degree, and we only get submissions for a 40, let's go crazy, a 55-foot office building. We're starting and delaying the process. There goes that aggressive construction timeline because the clock's ticking and we haven't even moved a foot because we're not getting the submissions that we need to, that we as a council will finally come to an agreement on. The committee has done a good job in regards to defining some things loosely, in regards to, Alderman Healy stated, in regards to stormwater. That's one of the criteria that I think should be in there. It's not as definitive as I would personally prefer, but I think that's something that should be in there. But then on the flip side, I'll go back to the sales tax generating property, that is not in there to any degree. But the draft is showing that we are very concerned with an aggressive construction timeline. So I think that there is validity of having some of these specifics because the committee has provided some of the specifics in the draft before us. You know, there was a decision to mention about the height in regards the original proposal or the current proposal of being not preferred over 45 feet. There was committee discussion and consensus of having the developers consider stormwater. The thing that I don't see in here is sales tax generating. And at this time, I would like to make a motion to add that this development should include a portion that would be sales tax generating for the city of Elmhurst. I believe, Mr. Mayor, that the appropriate page would be page 11 under section 5. But if the city attorney or the committee would like to direct me, that's fine as well.
I'd ask you to be as specific as possible with your motion, Alderman Brand.
Another alderman made a motion and
Relax.
How-
I'm
I am
I'm
relaxed,
pulling
Mr.
up.
Mayor.
I'm pulling up the RFP that you referenced. I was on the other one.
Point of order. Mr. Mayor, this is only, this report is, the report says it will be substantially
Yes.
this format, so I believe the committee can find a way, if the motion passes, to work it in.
Understood. Alderman Braham, please restate your motion.
That this property would include sales tax generating revenue.
Okay, we have a motion to add to the RFP that any proposal is required to include or should be encouraged to include, Alderman Braham.
I'll be flexible.
Should be considered.
Should be encouraged or considered.
Tax-generating businesses should be considered as part of the RFP process.
Thank you.
We have a second. Is that clear, first of all? Council, clear on that? Do we have a second? Alderman Gutenkopf. Further discussion on whether or not to add, we have a motion to amend the RFP to add a statement that says proposals should, what did I say? Consider? Encourage?
Should be considered.
Should consider retail
Property sales tax generating.
property sales tax generating business.
Sales tax.
Sales tax generating business.
I hope all are property
Sorry.
tax generating.
Never know. Okay, discussion. Alderman Mulliner.
My concern with this is twofold. One is, we do encourage that to begin with because of the fact that our zoning ordinance requires retail on the first floor. That's number one. But number two that I have a concern about is that if somebody wanted to come in here and tell me that they wanted to build a 45-foot story building and they wanted it to be an entirely office building and they were gonna put 500 bodies into that building because they were building it for a corporation and they needed the first floor to be offices, I'm not gonna turn that building down because they don't have retail on the first floor. I'm gonna look at it and say, I've got 500 bodies that are coming in here that are gonna spend money in my downtown, and I'm gonna encourage them to do that. So I have concerns about saying that we should say that sales tax is a requirement, because there's other ways that we generate sales tax, and one of those is by creating that captive audience. We all have talked about that need for that captive audience. This is on, and I don't want to divide the city when it comes to this, but this is on the west side of Addison. It's a very wide street, but it's a street that there's not very much retail on that side of the street. There's basically a dry cleaner over there right now, and there's a hair salon and a dentist, okay, for all practical purposes. There's a couple other things over there. This is a perfect location for an office complex that could draw a lot of people in if we got the right developer to come in and say, I'm interested in moving my entire corporate office here. And that could have a huge impact on us. So I want us to be very careful on what we put into this. That was the whole point of what we were trying to do, was to create that creativity and to allow people to come in with ideas that were outside of our normal thinking process. So my concern is that I don't want to discourage somebody from coming in with that proposal.
Any other comments? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, I think that Alderman Braham's intent was to be flexible and to highlight that the city desires this, which is why I think he didn't include definitive language like must include sales tax generating. So really, I understand that the committee wants to be as flexible as possible, but at some point, you've got to stand for something. And, you know, perhaps I'm mistaken, but we have other buildings, relatively new dentist's office, to be sure, that doesn't have retail on the first floor. It's smack dab in the middle of downtown. So I do think that we've spent a lot of time talking about how important it is to have first floor retail and have sales tax generating. So really, is it that big a deal to add some phrasing in here that says we're going to encourage it?
Any other comments? Alderman Palomsky.
I think I would say that the committee does stand for something and that we stand for the market, and we would like to see what the proposals bring us.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Levin.
I won't repeat anything I said, but an example is, would you rather have all office, no retail, or a restaurant with garbage problems in the back? So you bring up one bad and one good. That's flexibility. That's what it's all about here.
Okay. Alderman Braham.
Thank you. I think it's about encouragement and setting some specifics once again, and that is why I hesitated when Mr. Mayor asked for a clarification on what should be stated, or what my intent was. I did hesitate. I wanted to say required because that is what I personally believe should go there. But I left it looser language because of the fact, that flexibility, but also giving the developer some direction from the city council, so they're on target when they send out a proposals to us. Alderman Mulliner made statements in regards to what's there today, and his statements are accurate on what's there today. I don't want to settle for status quo. I understand what's there today, but I want to continue to improve upon what's there today, either on the west side of Addison, the east side of Addison, York Road, or anywhere within the city of Elmhurst. And the statement, I don't believe, is true of first floor retail or sales tax generating is required. Sorry, that was really garbled. Sales tax generating is not required on the first floor. That is, the statement of it is being required on the first floor is not correct. We have banks on many first floors within our downtown area, and therefore, we can't default to something that is not currently part of our ordinance today. So I strongly believe that we need, so we do provide direction, that we do need to make a statement of what we want to see. What is our vision? What is the Elmhurst vision for this piece of property? I go back to the statements I've said earlier. It's about control. We don't have opportunities, many opportunities in the city of Elmhurst when we as a council, we as the Elmhurst residents, get to state what we would like to see. This is an opportunity. It's been done before. It was done on Schiller Court with the parking deck there. First floor retail, or sales tax generating, wasn't stated as retail. First floor sales tax generating in that property when we redevelop that. So I hope that everybody supports this motion. I'm not putting a percentage on the motion. I'm making sure that at least we see some type of sales tax generating property there. And if all proposals come back with no sales tax generating properties, as I said, my motion is not a requirement. It's direction.
Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, one thing that I just want to make sure that I'll stand corrected on, our zoning code for downtown does require retail on the first floor. Retail can be banks. It's not necessarily sales tax generating. So I will stand corrected on that.
Okay, any other comments as it relates to the motion to amend? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. I will remind the council that the motion to amend is to add some sort of language to the RFP that encourages developers to include sales tax generating businesses within their proposal. Clerk Spencer.
Braham.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
No.
Dunn.
No.
Leader.
No.
Palumski.
No.
Toludo.
No.
York.
No.
Levin.
No.
Ely.
No?
Conquest.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
No.
2 ayes and 12 nays.
2 ayes, 12 nays, motion fails. Motion to amend fails. Back to the main motion, which is the report and the RFP attached. Any other comments or questions as it relates to this report out of DP&Z? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, I'm disappointed. I think we could have come up with a much stronger development proposal. I do want this parcel not to lay fallow. So I'm going to support this development proposal, but I really think we could have done a lot better. I'm disappointed in us as a council. I think we've wimped out, frankly, and I'd like to see some strong responses. Hopefully, we'll get things that we can easily agree on.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the motion.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Braham.
'Aye.
Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Ely,
Aye.
Conquest,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
Gutenkopf,
Aye.
We're good. Gutenkopf, I'm sorry, I didn't,
I said aye.
Deuter,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Agenda item 6.11 is approved. On to agenda item 7, reports and recommendations. 7.1, Mayor Morley. A couple of things this evening. First and foremost, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the State of the City. It was an opportunity for me as the mayor to address the folks in the room, but also the residents of Elmhurst about the past year, 2014, and also looking forward to 2015 and what we can expect. That will be playing on cable through the month of February, and ultimately I do know that the Chamber will put a link on their website. So I want to thank the Chamber for that opportunity, and also thank the chief sponsor of that, Community Bank, Bill Gooch, Rich Reichert, and everybody over there for hosting it at their building. Number 2, we have a strategic planning open house. The city is hosting a strategic planning open house that will be Monday, the 26th, here at City Hall on the 2nd floor. This is strategic plan that's been mentioned a couple of times here in City Council. The city, along with input from residents, is trying to pull together a strategic plan overall. There are 2 sessions on Monday, the 26th, from 4 to 5:30 and 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Any questions about that, or if you'd like to attend, please feel free to check out the city website or give the folks here at City Hall a call. Quick update, we did have a communications meeting with the Park District, was that yesterday?
Yes.
Yesterday, here at City Hall, to the Communications Committee as it relates to stormwater and stormwater mitigation. As the council's aware, I sent a letter to the Park District requesting that they reconsider one of their proposals that they had given back to the city, which was at York Commons. We had been looking at 2 sides of York Commons. Their initial proposal was to offer up what we're calling the west lobe. We asked them to reconsider the east lobe. We had a meeting yesterday morning with a bunch of engineers, folks from our communications group, the Park District, and we went, I think it was about a 2-hour meeting, went over a lot of facts and figures and answered as many questions as we could, including cost impacts if we went a couple of different directions. The Park District has committed to put on their agenda, where's my computer? 28th of this month, right? What time are their meetings? So next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you can check the website. Next Wednesday, for those interested, Park District will have on their agenda stormwater mitigation. At the time, they didn't know exactly specifically how they were going to word it on their agenda, but they will definitely be talking about York Commons and the projects at York Commons. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to attend. I also want to draw attention to the council's attention and the public's attention to agenda item 6.4 that was passed on the consent agenda this evening. This is a intergovernmental agreement between the city council and between the city and DuPage County. We have 5 projects that I'll call that are prioritized in the city. 5 major projects for stormwater mitigation. 2 at the parks, depending on parks. 2 with the school district, and there's one that we refer to as the Tree Streets project, Evergreen, Maple, et cetera, over there on 3rd. The solution for those folks involves DuPage County. I'm happy to say that I believe Tuesday morning, or last Tuesday morning, the county board as a whole actually voted and approved an RDA that will allow us to construct some pipes from the flooding area over to the quarry and allow us to put that floodwater in the quarry. So that is moving forward. Planning is getting started. If all things go well, we would actually break ground on that project this year in 2015. So I think that's a pretty big thing to highlight. Last but not least, Han Street, it was brought up a couple of times in terms of how long it's taking, maybe what not to do in terms of an RFP, but the scope was also mentioned. This is a $55 million project. I'm happy to say that staff and Morningside, the developer, have hammered out a draft agreement to a point where they feel it's necessary to bring it to council, bring it to committee. So that draft RDA will go to committee next Monday, and it's going to go to DP&Z committee. And I know that many on the council have been asking about that. Looking forward to getting that project moving forward and putting in a shovel in the ground eventually on that. I want to thank all the aldermen who've helped in that, particularly most recently Alderman Dunn was instrumental in giving us a push and getting that to committee. So thanks to everyone involved, and looking forward to that RDA at the committee level. And that's it for me. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I just have one item tonight. It relates to stormwater in terms of new management policies that we have put together. At the January 7th Public Works Committee meeting, this was discussed, and it was asked that I bring it forward, and it's good news that we want to share. And so I'll go through a few items. If you didn't have a chance to read the agenda items for that day, and for the benefit of those in the crowd and those watching from home, in May of 2014, the council adopted the new single-family home stormwater management policy. So as a recap of the past year, 49 new single-family homes were permitted under this new policy. Last year, we permitted 145 homes, so of that, 49 of them were subject to this policy. And we had another 19 new single-family homes that were applied for in 2014 that will also be subject to the new policy. The requirements for the policy have mostly been met through dry wells and underground storage systems, or a combination of both. So that's 49 new homes that will be storing some stormwater on site, another 14, and any others that have come in since then. Secondly, in July, the council adopted the existing home stormwater management policy. And that's where if you're putting an addition on or something like that, you would be subject to some stormwater retention. Since that time, 155 public work permits have been issued, and of those permits, approximately 1/3 increased the impervious surface on the lot and therefore had to install some sort of stormwater management system. And then lastly, in August, the council adopted the Residential Stormwater Management Incentive Program. And we've had a number of inquiries from residents. However, we've had a limited number of people who've actually pursued that. We anticipate, though, due to the inquiries and the interest, that 2015 certainly will hold more as far as people voluntarily putting that on their property and getting reimbursed for that. So some good news out of that stormwater related as far as other things that the city's doing, other policies that we've implemented that we feel are being successful. That's it.
Okay, any other reports or recommendations? Seeing none, go on to other business. Any other business? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to tack on a few things as it relates to stormwater. With those 49 homes that have been permitted, I think if you add up the storage, it equates to about a half-acre foot, so it's a pretty significant amount of water. And then as it relates to the Tree Streets project, with that getting underway, that should come online for spring of 2016. So about
Okay.
a year's time, so
Definitely good news.
pretty good situation.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to tack on a couple additional points regarding stormwater. First, Mayor, I just because it's important to me, I want to correct you. We're not solving the Tree Street issue, we're mitigating the Tree Street issue, because I still don't believe there's such a thing as solving the problem. However, regarding that project, I do want to thank the cities or villages of Villa Park, Oak Brook Terrace, and Hinsdale, all of whom had to review the engineering and give the approval. They're okay for us to put water into the quarry, and that's at the county's behest. And then also, of course, DuPage County and their board for moving as quickly as they did. And it's my understanding that Paul Fickner really did a good job in shepherding that through. If you think about it, 2 years ago, the Tree Streets, and again, collectively we'll call them the Tree Streets, weren't really on our list of projects. that there were a lot of other projects that, you know, are still on the list and that we're working through, but the Tree Street project wasn't. And we were able to work with the county, who then worked with Hinsdale, Oak Brook Terrace, and Villa Park, and got that done very quickly to provide flood mitigation for a large number of residents that are in the vicinity of the quarry. So, you know, I think it's important that we as a city council recognize the efforts of those cities and the county. And then secondly, I want to add in the stormwater, and Alderman Kennedy mentioned the half-acre foot. That was a rough estimate provided by staff. When you combine the half-acre foot that we approved 2 weeks ago for the Addison Street parking deck, you know, in a little over 4 or 5 months, we've managed to add an acre-foot of detention, retention in the city of Elmhurst for water that either won't hit our sewers or will hit it very slowly to the point where it won't impact us during a major event. That's just in 4 or 5 months. So given, you know, additional years and entire years of construction and building, you know, we said at the time that those policies wouldn't help the here and the now per se, but they were more of a long-term thing, a long-term fix. And I'm very encouraged, and I think the committee is too, and we as a council should be, that those results are what they are, you know, so that down the road, the actions we're taking now will make a dramatic impact on stormwater in the city of Elmhurst. Thank you.
Okay, well said. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Deuter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.